Good evening and welcome to BNN Brief News Network. We have a lot to get through tonight, and every single story we are covering this hour connects back to one central reality: the growing gap between what the Trump administration says it is doing and what it is actually delivering. Let's start with Iran. It was another day of effectively nothing happening on the diplomatic front with Iran. This comes one day after President Trump quietly chose to ignore his own self-imposed deadline for those negotiations to produce a result. And that, frankly, should surprise no one, because no one on this planet violates Trump's deadlines more consistently than Donald Trump himself. Rather than acknowledge that the deadline had simply passed without result, Trump released a public statement claiming that Iranian negotiators were, in his telling, practically begging him to extend the deadline, pleading for more time to put together a reasonable proposal for him to consider. The Iranian government responded swiftly and directly. In an official statement, Tehran said that the Islamic Republic of Iran has welcomed dialogue and continues to do so, but that what stands in the way of any genuine negotiation is not Iranian reluctance. According to Tehran, the real obstacles are, and we are quoting the Iranian government here, breach of commitments, blockade, and threats. The statement went on to say that the world sees the endless hypocritical rhetoric and the contradiction between claims and actions coming from the American side. We are now on day 53 of what this administration has framed as Donald Trump's war with Iran. And when you step back and look at the full picture, the explosions, the casualties, the Tomahawk missile strike that struck a girls' school and killed hundreds of people, and you ask what, concretely, has been achieved for the American people or for global stability, the honest answer is nothing. What has been delivered, however, is higher fuel prices. And higher fuel prices mean higher prices on everything that moves on a truck in this country, which is to say, nearly everything. And rather than spending this day working on ways to help American families weather what the administration keeps insisting is only a temporary spike in the cost of gas and other goods, President Trump spent it on social media. What was he posting about? The United States Supreme Court. The High Court ruled against the president, siding with the Constitution on the question of tariffs, finding that Donald Trump had illegally and unconstitutionally imposed those tariffs unilaterally. The Constitution is unambiguous on this point. The power to levy tariffs belongs to Congress, not the executive. In his social media response, Trump said, and this is his framing, not ours, that handing over what he called $159 billion in tariff refunds to people who have been, in his words, ripping off our country for years, was, to use his term, unexplainable. Let's explain it anyway. When any entity, whether it is the federal government, a corporation, or an individual, illegally takes money from you, the most fundamental and basic requirement of the law is that that money be returned to you. That is not a controversial legal concept. That is the foundation of how the legal system operates. And here is the part that the president either does not understand or is deliberately misrepresenting. Every single penny of that $160 billion, plus interest, that must now be refunded will go exclusively to American entities, to American businesses and American consumers who paid those tariffs on goods imported into this country. Those tariffs were paid right here, on American soil, by American companies when the goods arrived at our ports. The people Trump is calling the enemy in this situation are American businesses. And it gets more troubling from there. The largest refunds, totaling billions and billions of dollars, are owed to companies like Walmart, Apple, and Amazon. And yesterday, Trump said, in what can only be described as a veiled threat, that he would be, quote, very happy if those big companies chose not to apply for their refunds. His exact words were that he would remember if they did not ask for what they are legally owed. Let that sink in. The President of the United States is telling American corporations not to pursue money that the Supreme Court has ruled is legally theirs, and is signaling that he will find a way to harm them if they do. Financial journalist Stephanie Ruhle made the critical point last night, and she made it quickly and correctly. If a company like Apple declines to apply for billions of dollars in refunds it is legally owed, the company's own shareholders will sue that company. And they would win. Because knowingly choosing not to recover assets that belong to the company is a direct violation of the fiduciary duty that corporate executives owe to their shareholders under the law. That is not a gray area. That is settled corporate law. And President Trump, by all indications, does not know that. This is the same president who, just a few days ago, appeared to genuinely believe, incorrectly, that his vice president was somewhere in the air, flying halfway around the world to Pakistan to conduct back-channel negotiations with Iranian officials on his behalf. Trump appeared to think his son-in-law was involved as well. For the record today, the president seemed to have been corrected on that point, and appeared to understand that his vice president was not, in fact, in Pakistan. At 1:34 in the afternoon today, while accomplishing nothing on the Iran negotiation front, Donald Trump took to social media to announce the results of his personal investigation into the previous night's election in Virginia. In doing so, he revealed quite clearly to the world, and to Iran's leadership, exactly where his head is actually at and what he is truly focused on. Trump posted, quote, "A rigged election took place last night in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. Who needs an investigation, apparently, when Detective Trump is already on the case? He simply looked at who won, and concluded it must have been stolen." Trump went on to claim that, quote, "all day long Republicans were winning." There is one fundamental problem with that statement. There is no such thing as winning an election all day long. There never has been. No votes are counted during the daytime on Election Day. There is no running score. No one knows anything until the polls close. The post also contained a word, unintelligible, used to describe the ballot language in a referendum. And we will simply note that unintelligible is not a word that typically shows up in Donald Trump's vocabulary, which raises reasonable questions about whether Trump himself actually wrote that particular post. What is entirely believable, however, is Trump's next line, where he declared himself, quote, "an extraordinarily brilliant person who had no idea what the hell the referendum was even talking about." Here is what actually happened in Virginia last night. Voters approved a redistricting plan that had been endorsed by Governor Abigail Spanberger. That plan is widely expected to deliver 4 additional Democratic seats in the House of Representatives from the state of Virginia. And it is worth putting this in its proper context. Virginia Democrats chose to bring this redistricting plan directly to the voters. Every voter in the state got to weigh in. That is in sharp contrast to the Texas redistricting scheme, which originated as a suggestion from Donald Trump himself to Texas Republicans as a way to manufacture more Republican House seats from that state. Texas voters were never given the opportunity to vote on that plan. And it is that Texas maneuver, driven by Trump, that directly prompted California Democrats, and now Virginia Democrats, to respond by taking their own redistricting proposals to the public. The likely net result is that Democrats could soon hold a majority in the House of Representatives, a majority that would give them the full investigative power to scrutinize the Trump world corruption that was on full display today in a Senate hearing. That hearing centered on the Trump family's extraordinarily lucrative financial dealings with the United Arab Emirates. Here is what we know. Sheikh Tahnoon, the UAE's national security advisor and the brother of the Emirati president, invested $500 million into World Liberty Financial. That is the Trump family's cryptocurrency venture. And that investment came in just before President Trump's inauguration. Then there was a separate $2 billion investment by Sheikh Tahnoon into World Liberty's stablecoin, used to invest in Binance, a deal that effectively handed the Trump family operation $2 billion in liquid cash. And this happened at the very same time that the United States government relaxed its export controls on high-end artificial intelligence technology and advanced chips, relaxed them specifically for UAE companies. And now, according to testimony at today's hearing, the UAE is reportedly seeking something further, a currency swap line through the Exchange Stabilization Fund, a major financial instrument controlled by the U.S. Treasury. One senator summed up the broader cost of all of this with striking clarity, stating that in their view, the war in Iran has already cost this country dearly, calling it a huge mistake that has made America less safe and significantly worse off. In addition to the lives lost, the senator noted the conflict is burning through more than $1 billion of American taxpayer money every single day, on top of the higher gas prices and rising costs across the board. And finally tonight, former Secretary of State John Kerry, the man who successfully negotiated the landmark agreement under which Iran formally pledged never to develop nuclear weapons, weighed in on the current situation. Kerry, who said he has not been consulted by the current administration, offered his assessment directly. Kerry said that his advice to the administration would be to slow down, to take the time to be reasonable, and to avoid the kind of unilateral moves, like seizing a ship, that harden the other side's position and eliminate the possibility of genuine give and take at the negotiating table. Kerry also pushed back forcefully on one of the recurring justifications for the military campaign, the claim that the Strait of Hormuz had been, or was at risk of being, closed. Kerry made clear that the Strait of Hormuz has never been shut down in any conflict or dispute the United States has ever had with Iran. And his bottom line was this: by tearing up the nuclear agreement and walking away from it, Donald Trump has left the United States in a significantly worse position than it was in before he took that step. That is where things stand tonight. We will have more on the Robert Kennedy Jr. testimony, including the racially charged exchange with Senator Angela Alsobrooks, coming up later in this broadcast. Senator Alsobrooks will join U.S. Live. Stay with U.S. You are watching BNN Brief News Network.